One of the things I used to worry a lot about when I was a younger man was eventually losing a lot of my friends. It looked like the natural progression of things as you got older. You'd all mature, those long nights of pure unfiltered banter would be replaced with talks about economic policies and how you can't eat bacon anymore because your gallbladder is trying to take you out. And that's if you're lucky enough to even talk to them, with all the jobs, marriages and kids taking a hammer to your head count, breaking off chunks at a time until there's nothing left to keep you company but a dodgy knee and a sympathy drink you've been handed by your inner barman. Well, given I'm smack bang in the middle of my 30s, long since past my golden years of my time with the boys, should I have been worried? Well, let me answer that for you. So let me address the obvious question first. Where are the boys now from Living with the Boys? Playlist in the description for the new and forgetful. Well, it might surprise some people, but it was never actually that close with Connor and Tony. They were actually more PJ and Hef's friends they'd often invite under our umbrella when there was a session on. They were nice lads, and any friend of the boys is a friend of mine as far as I'm concerned. But we actually rarely interacted without a pint glass between us. But I hear they're doing okay though. As for PJ, well, he has a channel of his own where he makes animated stories that are objectively better than mine.
I swear to God I fucking did it! If it's anything I fucking do! Oh fuck! He blasted it!
But whose upload schedule is so slow that I like to stand beside it sometimes just so I can feel better about my unfortunate looking one. We're still good friends, which isn't going to be a mystery to some of you. And then there's Hef. Like so many great men in their prime, he was taken from us in his glory years. Struck down in battle, armorless in defeat, he offered his soul up to the gods of Olympus, who sentenced him with throwing himself genitals first into the great chasm of Gaia, never to be seen again. Or in other words, he met a lovely woman, got married, had a rake of kids, and then took up boxing or something because he suddenly got very good at slipping and ducking every social invite we threw his way. Call me old-fashioned, but I think when you become mates with somebody, you're duty bound to put in some effort. And the fact that Hef couldn't even do the bare minimum and abandon his wife and children whenever the boys wanted, well, to me, that's very telling. But look, that's life. Everyone eventually has to get on with theirs, and sometimes that means your paths don't cross as much. If you don't already know that, you'll learn in time. The question you really should want to know the answer to is, what happened to Dara? And if you don't, well, that's tough shit because I need you to for this comforting point about male relationships I'm setting out to make in this video. So what is a Dara? Well, Dara is another one of the boys. What's more, he's a core member. Not like Connor or Tony, who only materialised when there was a pub involved. Dara was there from the very beginning, and I knew him every bit as much as I knew PJ or Hef. And I still do, because me, PJ and Dara are still the best of friends to this day. The reason why you've never heard me talk about him is simple. Most of the best stories I have from those years with the boys happened around alcohol. And Dara, or the blasphemer if you'd prefer, doesn't really drink. I know, and yes, this is considered a serious offence with us, one we've tried to address many times, but every time the council privately convened to decide his punishment, we'd always end up just forgetting why we were there. But one of these days, lad, mark my words. So how would I best describe Dara as a friend? Well, did you ever have one of those friends that you could really rely on? Somebody who would always be there when it counts? Maybe somebody close to you died and you need a distraction from the grief. Maybe your missus walked out and you need somebody to talk to that isn't afraid to tell you that you're the fuck up. Maybe you were having a toss and the cameraman suddenly cut to the guy's face at the wrong time and you need somebody to tell you that staring into the eyes of another climaxing man as you finish doesn't make you gay. You know, a good, reliable, salt-of-the-earth friend. But if you're not the one to reach out to them first, you'd never hear from them at all. Could be 6 months of radio silence and you decide to call them just to make sure that they haven't died and didn't tell you, but then they just chat away to you like you were only talking this morning. Well, Dara has been dealing with that for years too, because I'm that friend. And that especially clashes with him because out of the three of us, he's the social butterfly. That man hasn't much of an interest in booze, but when it comes to chats, this man's thirst is unquenchable. It doesn't matter if it's a bottle of 1979 Alien franchise, a big case of Catholicism cans, or a big old barrel of box. He'll drink that bar dry and still be able to drive home afterwards. We'd often have an old group chat of an evening, and he'd be so eager to chat that as soon as you'd answer, he'd be out the gates like a priest in a paediatrics. Evening, lad. How's things? Oh, not so bad now, yourself? Ah, yeah, can't complain. Tipping away, sure, you know yourself. Oh, here's himself on. Well, Dara, how's things? Oh, come here, and I tell you, lads. And that's why I think Christopher Hitchens was spot on when he said that about Islam. But anyway, lads, I'm not too bad. How are ye? Given you wouldn't be able to power a small watch with my social battery, you'd imagine his relentless need for chats would be my biggest complaint about having him as a friend. And yeah, I will admit, sometimes it does clash with my more frugal want for it. I have the place to myself, a game about running a business, and a few pints to drown out the despair I feel from age and making me enjoy these games now. It's going to be a good old Ducky night in. Oh, come on. I was only talking to him like 2 weeks ago. Ugh. Hey, lad. Yeah, I know. Look, I've just been busy. You know that isn't true now, lad. You know you mean a lot to me. It's just tonight isn't a good night. No, stop it now. You're just being silly. You know I only have eyes for you and PJ. Well, no, nothing important. I just wanted to... Yeah, I know. Friendships are important too. Okay, fine. Just give me a few minutes to pour my addiction down the sink so we can feed yours. But if I'm to be honest with myself, I know there's nothing strange about Dara wanting to talk to his friends a lot. The only weird thing is this asocial green fucker here, who was born with his social phone stuck on airplane mode. Just because it is who I am, doesn't mean I gotta like it. So oddly enough, I'm actually thankful that he keeps on swinging until he punches through this damn flaw of mine. Even if that very flaw is crying out right now to stop me from talking out of fear, it'll embolden old chatty catty over there. No, if I was to really put my finger in Dara and have a good root around, I think the thing we clash most on is that he's an incredibly intelligent man who is hands down the best master debater I've ever had the displeasure of gripping my throbby veiny opinion. The man is a master of arguments and it drives me f***ing nuts. I could spend a year researching some completely obscure topic, the history of a toilet U-bend, something nobody outside a plumber has any business knowing much or anything about, and 5 minutes into me ambushing him with that debate, he'll have me feeling like my missus has just walked in on me with another woman and I have to try talk my way out of it while still being plugged in. Not that you'd ever need to give him a reason to debate, because the man lives and breathes for intellectual sparring sessions, so he'll find one, which is grand most of the time. But some nights you just want to talk about which female celebrity you'd like to launch out of her shoes with the rodding you'd give her, without it turning into a 3-hour long debate about lookism in Hollywood. So over the years, me and PJ have each developed ways to elegantly sidestep one when we can feel a debate approaching. PJ's solution, been fairly on brand for him, is both simple and effective. He'll just decide to suddenly agree with him for no reason. It doesn't matter what was said, if PJ senses a Dara debate brewing that he has no interest in engaging with, he'll just change teams, which is especially funny when Dara knows exactly what he's doing. That Last of Us episode with the gay lads. To be fair, it was very well done, and if it was its own separate thing, I'd have no problem with it. I'm just saying it was completely unnecessary to the season. You could have just skipped right over it, and it wouldn't have made a scree of difference to the season at all. 'Twas pure tacked on. I think you're wrong, lad. They're using the TV show to flesh out smaller characters from the game so they're more real and less like NPCs. By your own admission, you liked the episode, so what's your problem? My problem is it had f*** all bearing on the story whatsoever. If hadn't, but it had been plopped right into the middle of the season, it completely f***s up the pacing. They interrupted a gritty, dark, post-apocalyptic story with an episode of The Notebook with beards, for f***'s sake. It did have bearing. I'd argue that it shows that caring for someone is still possible in this world, and that letter for Bill tells him that. It's exactly what kicks off his band with Ellie. It's not filler. Just because it's not all about the main characters and misery doesn't mean it doesn't matter. You know what, lad? You're 100% right. What? I was wrong. You're right. You win. I know what you're doing, and you're a prick. However, usually I have an extra thing to contend with when debating him. You see, but Dara and PJ talk like they're writing tweets for Trump. Absolutely zero concept of an indoor voice. Which is a problem when most debates happen at 3 o'clock in the morning in my house, 6 feet from a girl who has to be up in 4 hours. So I've had to come up with a very cunning way that both sidesteps their lack of volume control and elegantly sidesteps the debate. And not to blow my own horn, but I think it's pretty bulletproof. Really? I thought it was absolutely fantastic, lad. How? But the only thing impressive about it was how they managed to make Dracula boring. I strongly disagree. I mean, it was a visual masterpiece. The cinematography alone was flawless, and the score. I don't know how anybody could call that boring. It was a pure atmospheric masterclass of cinema. It was a masterclass in how to shoot 2.5 hours of well-framed bollocks, if you ask me. That was less a movie and more like somebody got a bit over-ambitious with the runtime of their aftershave ad. Look, here's Connie. She'll be more than happy to agree with me. Connie, what do you think of the Nosferatu movie? Look, I just think you're wrong. It's art. It might not be for everybody, but it's the kind of film that rewards attention, and not everybody pays attention. That doesn't mean the movie's bad. In fact, most people liked it. I think it did a fantastic job channeling the existential loneliness at its roots, and gave the story a real sense of tragedy without sacrificing the horror elements. Even if it's not for you, it still deserves praise for that. I'm wrong. Well, excuse me, my opinion doesn't align with thousands of post-film school critics that were so good at making movies, they decided to review them on the internet for a living to give everyone else a chance. And what fucking horror elements? The only horror I felt was when I realised I wasted 2.5 hours of my life looking at long shots of candles and curtains. That's exactly the kind of movie that has to grab a selfie stick every time it wants to have a wank. Ducky, you're just never going to learn with him, are you? Okay, truth be told, outside of having a missus with a tolerance for my back so high she has to tuck her emotional flaps in when she pulls up her knickers, I don't actually have a tactic when it comes to his quirks. I'm just too stubborn, pig-headed and prideful to let him waggle his well-articulated willy in my face without wanting to stand up and proudly waggle mine right back in his. Truth be told, I have to debate him. He has a lot going for him. He's smart, charismatic, a good friend, knows how to take the piss out of himself and call you out in your own bullshit. All of which pale in comparison to my favourite thing about him. His laugh. He's got this big, hearty, infectious bastard of a laugh, and it hits like black tar heroin to a joke fiend like me. Even if I get so much as a sniff of it, I'll be chasing the next one like a toothless alley tramp with a fiver in a dream. We're all essentially just addicts using each other to make a score of laughs, debates and philosophy to keep the hands from shaking for another day. At one point, our social addictions got so out of control, we had to start YouTube channels just to offload the excess misery, comedy and intellect we had developed a taste for over the years, just so we wouldn't overwhelm the group chat. So with that being said, you might be wondering what keeps an antisocial, a nihilist and a contrarian so close after the days of sessions, chaos and chasing boxer long behind them. Well, it's the same thing that brought us together in the first place. The banter. Because out of all the things that change as you get older, shifting priorities, different interests, lads moving to entirely different countries, the one thing that never does is the banter between ye. The best stuff like Gay Tuesday, Sean the Horse, the Wankit, the word wonk didn't come from tearing up the clubs of a Friday night. It all came from those quieter moments where you're sitting in a room with your mates trying to one-up each other with the biggest laugh. And I can tell you now, more than a decade later, that part hasn't aged a day. I can give you an example from just a couple of weeks ago. So the three of us were chatting about old conquests from our glory days, and Dara was telling us a story about a girl he'd been chasing for a while, messaging her with all the bravado and the arrogance only a young man can muster, guaranteeing her to take her to the moon and back all night long and so many climaxes that'd be falling out of her hands and rolling all over the floor. In his words, lads, I told her the moment I got hold of her, I was going to absolutely scuttle her. And lucky for him, that day came sooner rather than later. But unfortunately so did Dara when he blew his head gasket after ferociously breaking her back for about 23 seconds. He said, "Oh lads, it was absolutely tragic. Didn't even get a chance to redeem myself after because at the time she was back out of the bathroom, I was in an absolute heap, fast asleep in the bed." Suffice it to say, that was the first and last time I was ever invited over. Now, that story's funny enough on its own. But of course we did what men do and started building hilarious hypotheticals into it like we were trying to write a comedy sketch with increasingly more ridiculous outcomes. Like Dara inviting her out to lunch to make up for his poor performance, promising her that he'll bring his A game this night. She runs to the bathroom quickly before they head back to hers and comes back to find him already passed out in the chair with his hollandaise shot across the table. But still determined to reclaim his pride, he manages to convince this poor girl to give him one more chance. This time, there's no messing about. He's going to pick her up, head straight to his place, and he'll finally be able to give her the rodding she's earned. So he pulls up outside her apartment. She walks up to the car and opens the door to find the inside of the car absolutely coated and him in a deeper sleep than Epstein's prison officer. The saga of the premature Dara just kept getting worse. We eventually got to a point that any sort of contact was enough.
Hey, how you doing? Look, I just...
And nothing about those chats have changed whatsoever over the years, and I don't think they ever will. If the three of us were sitting next to each other in the home at the age of 80, we'd still be cracking each other up with hypothetical stories where I shit myself every time I sneezed or PJ became erect every time he was sad. And that's the wholesome point I want to leave you lads with. Because yeah, you will get older, your life will change, you will lose some friends, and you're not going to be doing a lot of the things with the remaining boys that you might have done before. But at its core, it's not about how many sessions you go on, how often you get to talk, or how many boys you have left. Boiled down to its purest form, it's banter that's the hollandaise that makes the boys sandwich taste so good. And I'm happy to report that the boys can still make me roll on the floor laughing just as hard now as they did at a house party 15 years ago. About the only thing that's changed is I've a harder time getting back up. So thanks for tuning in. I hope you got some peace of mind from this video. I'd also love it if you could pop on over to Dara's channel and give him a look. We've been great friends for years, so it's nice that I can finally give him some love here and shout out his channel that he does indeed work very hard on. He's an atheist who's big on debating, especially about religions, and he's my friend, so I get endless amusement out of annoying him. So if you really want to do something for me, pop on over to his channel and tell him God sent you. And I will catch you lads and ladies in the next one.